My name is Jonathan Parks, and welcome to Jonathan's Nature Crafts. I must inform you that I do not live in this house by myself, but live here with other people. Sometimes other members of the household may have to walk through areas where I might be recording with other family members on the phone. If you hear any noise like that, please feel free to disregard. We are doing our best to get noise-canceling equipment, which may at least keep you from hearing exactly what is being said. Thank you for considering. Now I know that what I've shown you all in a previous video was those flat plane carving displays I did out of the book of Daniel, where I showed you the Nebuchadnezzar and the Hebrew children and the Daniel in the lion's den. But here's another one I wanted to come to show. It's one I made of David and Goliath, which was just one of those things probably from the books of history in the Bible that I decided to kind of make out here, and where you kind of see, I'll show you all a few things I did. I probably worked on Goliath first and kind of did him in a way where I could carve him out of butternut and give him kind of like that butternut face like I did for the others, the flat face. And I kind of, did some other measurements. I kind of took some of the measurements in the book, and I don't remember what formula I used to increase the measurements, but somehow or another I just kind of made some percentage more of the measurements or some additional fraction or something like that, and kind of where when it came down to it, I ended up using a little piece of fir tree to make his sword here, and I forget what kind of, but it looks like it's fur after all. I just decided to give him a little hand to have something between his body and the shield, made the shield out of buckeye, just like this, so that he could kind of be standing in a way with his sword and his shield. And as for David, I made him from a little piece of poplar, and I kind of just sort of carved some things the same way, with the exception of the fact that rather than using the corner of the wood, I used the front surface of the wood as the blank, and made him a hand underneath and a hand above, and drilled the little hole in which this little sling goes. I made the sling out of an old piece of leather jacket off of a jacket I used to wear, and I put a piece of floral wire in here to make the sling more open, and I kind of used just a little tiny piece of branch inside of there just to sort of like make the little stone in the sling so that the sling is open, though you can't really tell from outside the swing what that really looks like. But there's just probably a little bit more that I'm going to show, and I have a few clips I've made out of other stories of little projects I made in the past. One like what you've seen before that were over the years projects that I made out of the books of Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles. If you know the Bible, you know that most of King David's life takes place in the books of Samuel, but then there's other kings whose lives take place in the stories of Kings and Chronicles, and I just decided when it came down to it, I wanted to put these all together for the same project. So that right here is what I am about to show. Here you get to see the original David and Goliath again, which, as I have showed you before in a previous video in a regular video setting, but this is the old picture where I have the little scenery out of National Geographic where I have the Jerusalem city up in the background and the desert below for them to be standing on, which is kind of the way the display originally was. And I told you all most things about it when you saw it before, but this is what I wanted you to see the scenery too. It was a piece I had made in the past based on the story about David and Bathsheba, and I made it out of these two little baskets. You can see up at the top that David is up there made out of the little seashell with pipe cleaners and his king robe and everything up at the top of that little building that is supposed to be his house that I made out of the little coffee can and the two little paper tubes. Down below, you can see where Bathsheba is that little plastic doll that is down there in the bathtub of the other basket, and how I have used a lot of denim and blue cloth to make the water she is bathing in. And that was just the little way I had of coming up with that. Unfortunate how when I was so young, my imagination was so vivid, and there were just a lot of things I didn't think about as far as what was appropriate then and what not. This is another piece I no longer have, but this is the story about King Solomon and the two women that came to him with the baby, and the story about how they both claimed the baby. And Solomon said that to find out whose baby it is, we could cut it in half and let each of you have one. One lady was okay with it, and the other one said, no, just give it to her. And so that was how they found out who the true mother was. And so that was how God gave Solomon his wisdom. And I would probably also say that there were times whenever I was younger when I used to think that I could compare certain women in the Bible to modern strippers and just kind of use certain things like this just to try to illustrate it, to modernize things. And of course, I know that wasn't a good idea, but I'll tell you a little bit more about this piece. I used a piece of like wheel, the outer part of a car wheel or a tire, to make the little stand that they are on. And one of those old Michael the Archangel pieces I cut the arm off of to make the arm of Solomon with the sword. And you probably also see how I kind of took that little jar and kind of wrapped some cloth around it to make Solomon's robe. And to make his head, I actually used a light bulb and covered it with a sock and made his little crown up there out of golden pipe cleaners. So that was the little imagination I had to come up with that. It's only a piece that I share because it comes out of, the books of Kings, just like the story about Solomon does. And of course, Solomon is in Chronicles too, but this is the story about Queen Jezebel where she gets eaten by dogs. And for this and for the little Bathsheba character, I used these little dolls that I purchased from Goodwill around the time to make these things. And I was shopping at Goodwill in those days for little craft supplies because I had just gotten fired from a job working at the hospital and was doing a lot of shopping around to get little cheap things just to kind of make my little displays from. And so this is how I illustrated that story and used the little plastic dogs too. And last but not least, I have this little thing here that tells the story about Elijah and Elisha, and the thing about when the chariot came down to take Elijah up into heaven. If you know the story about how Elijah never died, he was just taken up to heaven by a chariot and an angel. And He was Elisha's mentor as a prophet, and down below you kind of see Elisha there made out of pipe cleaners waving goodbye to Elijah, and you see his little purple robe made from the purple cloth and his little face made out of the little smiley face sticker. Now, the harp was an idea because back when I was attempting to learn to play harps, I kind of did a study on them and kind of made that little harp back in the days and decided to use it in this display. And those little clouds in the background belonged to something or another, decided to put those in. That little Elijah up there is actually from a Santa Claus from the Dollar Tree. I decided to remove the Santa Claus hat and use it on something else I made that I gave as a gift, but that little angel also came from the Dollar Tree. The sleigh was made out of certain random scraps of wood, kind of like the pieces that were made to hold up the little creatures from Revelation scraps. And about the two little horses, now, that white horse in the back was one that was part of a gift that was given to my mother by the mother of some children that my grandmother used to babysit. And it was to some old-fashioned fire trucks and some old-fashioned water trucks and things like that they kind of had back in the days. And the one in front is kind of like a little Tykes horse, a little plastic toy horse that my siblings and I probably played with when we were kids. All the things I've had to share out of Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles in the Bible, this is just one of those things that I forgot to bring out the first time, but remembered it again as I looked all through. But this is one of those things of King Uzziah, where I had these little doll figures that were used previously for gingerbread men, and kind of had that coffee can in the background, and you can kind of see how I made them. You know, Uzziah was the king who, you know, he went into the temple to burn incense to try to be a priest, which was kind of like against rules in Old Testament times. That was only for people who were in the family to be priests, but it was the kind of thing where Uzziah kind of became proud when he became powerful and took it upon himself to burn the incense and try to be the priest. And next thing you know, he was struck with leprosy. So on the left, it shows him burning incense as a king and how he, which is as before, and you will note that on the right it says after, and that was after he was struck with leprosy for burning the incense. And according to the Bible, he remained a leper for the rest of his life. Well, I do want to say that it was a pleasure to show you all the work I could make. So thank you for watching. I pray you will always keep in touch, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So thank you. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I hope to see you in the next video. Stay tuned.